These are woods. That's a cab tractor. I'm going to talk about 3 lies that people propagate when they're talking about cab tractors. And not only cab tractors, but tractors in general when you're dealing with woods. Let's get into it and let's kind of dispel some of the myths that are going around about working in the woods with tractors. Let's dive into it. I've had 2 cab tractors over the last 5 years. I own 75 acres of wooded property. I have never, ever once broke anything on my cab tractor inside my woods. There's all kind of things going on in these Facebook groups or computer forums or these tractor forums on computers about, oh, don't get a cab tractor. You'll knock a window out. You're gonna break a limb. A limb's gonna break your cab and all that stuff. Nah, don't buy into that hype. Brian over here in the Coyote group, look what he said. I don't care. I don't see what all the big deal is. These things are made to go into the woods. Everybody I know, they're not fragile. I mean, don't get me wrong. I agree with Brian 100%. Don't get me wrong. I don't think that you need to be barreling through the woods or whatever. You got to be careful. But look at some of these other comments in here. Don't get a cab. Glass is expensive. And don't get a cab because you're going to go work into the woods. Whatever. Who cares, right? If you're going to go into the woods and do some work, you're probably going to be careful anyway. And they're talking about the visibility and all that stuff. I can buy into the sounds, like you want to hear your implements and all that stuff. I get that, and I can agree with that or whatever. But the visibility in my TYM T574 is awesome. And you got to keep your head on a swivel anyway. So don't buy into the hype where you can't take your cab tractor into the woods. I'm going to tell you one thing. I actually broke a door on this T574, and it was I want to say it was like $690 or whatever. It wasn't over 700, but I can't remember exact price. But anyway, you know where I broke it? In my pole barn. I wasn't even in the woods. I was coming out of a bay in the pole barn. I was hooking up my box blade to it, and then I was pulling out, and I left my door open, and it caught the post on the lean-to, and it shattered the door. And wasn't even in the woods, and that's the only time I ever broke glass. I was watching a video from Al Lumna over at Lumna Acres. He broke his door. You know what he's doing? He was bush hogging in and he had his door open so he could look down and see the ditch that he was working in, and a rock came out. So, wasn't even in the woods. He was on the road. People break doors. That's just what happens with glass, right? So people that say, don't buy a cab because you're gonna be down in the woods or whatever. Totally nonsense in my opinion. And that's the best place to have a cab. I mean, get this, right? What if you're working around some limbs, or you're cleaning up some debris, and you shake a tree and you've got a widowmaker or something that's in the limbs, that's caught in the limbs above you, and that thing falls down? Wouldn't you rather have it hit the cab before it hits you? I think so. That's a far-fetched situation, but it's possible. If you're going to be in the woods and you're going to be hitting trees with your bucket or your grapple or your pallet forks or whatever, you got a tree puller, then a lot of those tree pullers are pretty popular implements nowadays. They go up there and they scissor the tree, and they pull it from the roots and everything up, like a fence post puller type deal. And if you pulled a dead limb out of a tree that you're working beside or something, that cab is going to protect you a little bit. Wouldn't you rather break a cab than you would your nugget? So why'd you have to go to the emergency room for stitches on your head? Well, because I didn't buy a cab because I was scared of working in the woods with it. Don't worry about it. I've had, like I say, this tractor has 370 hours on it. The other tractor, my Branson had 5220, had 300 hours on it. So out of 670 hours, several hundred of those are in thick woods. I'm not talking about like just trees here and there. I'm talking about thick woods. Not once I had an issue. I can count numerous times where it's actually helped me, and that's by running over in-ground yellow jackets, which we have a lot of here in Florida. I mean, it's just, they're everywhere, right? And I've bush hogged over them, I've run over them, and I can actually see them swarm, coming out of the ground in anger. And I'm glad I had that cab. You're talking about, not getting dust and all that stuff, and that's not a woods related problem. Like when you're bush hogging, not getting dust all over you and all that good stuff. That's just an added benefit. But don't buy into the lie that you can't have a cab tractor and go into the woods, because that is just not true. And there's two other things about woods and tractors that I want to talk to you about. So let's dive into number 2. The second thing people buy into is, I don't like these exposed fuel tanks. They're low to the ground. They're going to get hurt. 370 hours. I've run over everything that you can imagine, and I have yet to puncture a fuel tank. Don't get me wrong, they're plastic and they can puncture, but I ain't never done it. I just think some people make such a big deal out of it that it's not sensible. You're going to run over stuff, and they make skid plates and they make other protective items and stuff, but you can go over all kind of stuff and not worry about busting that fuel tank. So when people say, I don't like the exposed fuel tanks on the bottom, well, they're probably young and they can lift a 5-gallon jerry can fuel to a fuel tank that's some of them are right there in the grill or the hood, some of them are behind the operator seat, back in the back, but nonetheless you're lifting 5 gallons of fuel, and that sucker gets heavy. Not unless you have some type of fuel tank or fuel delivery system, like I've got one at the house that it's a Feel Right with a electric fuel pump. That makes life easier. But I've seen videos of people like Brad over at Piney Grove, and he talks about lifting your loaders up and putting a piece of board over your loader arms and then setting your fuel tank on that to fuel the fuel tank on top of your hood. Excellent idea, by the way. But I'm like, don't worry about the fuel tank on the bottom. It's okay. It's not like you're driving through a minefield, for crying out loud. Just go. Be careful. Try not to get rocking on some stump, because on these, look at where my hydraulic filter is. If I had that, it's actually lower than my fuel tank. So what do I do? Do I say, oh, I can't buy this tractor because one of my hydraulic filters is lower than my fuel tank? Well, guess what? I've never punctured the hydraulic filter neither. I mean, you can't. Just don't live in a bubble, is what I'm telling you. Because these fuel tanks, even though they are plastic and they can puncture, guess what? So can metal. Metal will rust. Metal will get dirty in it. Dirt and rust in it, and sediment type stuff. And these fuel tanks plastic ones are just easier on the system, cleaner for the fuel. And they're not going to, they're pretty resilient. So you don't have to worry about if you're going to puncture your fuel tank or not. Just be careful when you're going over something that's protruding. Like if you're going under, like you can see here, my tire's in a rut. You may not be able to tell it, but my tire's in a rut here. So if you're going over undulating terrain, your fuel tank's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. It being down here at the bottom. And I'm telling you, it's super easy to fuel. Like I said earlier, I've got the Feel Right thing, so it's no problem for me. Wherever it was at on the tractor, I don't care. But if you're filling it with 5-gallon cans, you're going to want that fuel tank right there. That's going to be better for you, and you don't have to worry about it. That's the second lie. There's a third lie, or a third misconception about some on the other side of the tractor that I want to talk about next. So let's jump into that. All right, the third thing that I want to talk about is the hydraulic hoses on the valve bodies. Of the three, to me, this is probably the most viable one, or the most concern for one, I guess. However, it still isn't horrible. What I mean by that is I've got a lot of hours on these two tractors that I mentioned earlier, the 5220 and now the 574. And both the designs were similar, and I've yet to have any issues with that. Now, do I think that you would be better served by having these recessed a little more? Absolutely. I mean, that will give you more protection. But at the end of the day, I haven't had any issues with it. This is a very tight turn for me. It may not show up on camera, but that pine tree and this stump right here, so I have to be careful when I'm doing this. But you know, like I said earlier in the video, just be careful. And those right there, they do flex a little, you know, so you ain't got to, you know, if you catch it with a small limbs like these or whatever, it's just going to brush off of it. Now if you get caught and you've got a no kidding limb that gets caught up in it and all that good stuff, you know, you might have some issues. But something like this one on the ground here, if that was to get caught up in it. But again, that's where keeping your head on a swivel comes into play, and you don't have to worry about that. So if you're going to be working a lot in the woods in your cab tractor, and you have an option to have a tractor that doesn't have hydraulic hoses sticking out, and you're really concerned about that, then get the tractor that doesn't have that sticking out. You know what I mean? It's that simple. But I'm telling you, I haven't had any issues with mine, and I'm a living proof that you can get in the woods with a cab tractor and not worry about your fuel tank, your windows, or your hydraulic hoses. Again, I've seen a video, and I can't remember the guy's name or the channel. I wish I could, or I would tell you who it was. But he modified his T-WAM to tuck his hoses in behind there, and he didn't have any issues with it after that. And he was a hay farmer. Gosh, that's just going to drive me crazy trying to figure out that guy's name. But anyway, he had a 754, and he did all kind of modifications on it. If you guys know who I'm talking about, leave it in the comments below. And if you made it this far in the video, if you don't know that channel, at least drop a tractor emoji in the comment section. Let me know you got this far in the video. But if you know what video I'm talking about, he's a hay farmer. He put like electronic quick attach on it. He put all kind of like new lights and new camera systems, electric actuator for his trailer hookup. It's a 754 model. I can't remember the guy's channel, but he did awesome work on his 754. And if you're that guy, leave your channel in the comment section. So those are three things that I think that really don't buy into the hype, is what I'm telling you, because it's just this simple. Everything has the potential to break. And if you're going to, you know, work in the woods a lot, and you know that, and you're going to like if you've seen the kind of what we call the B-roll, if you've seen those clips of me coming into the woods and all that, and you think, well, that's not heavy woods. How do you think it got cleaned? You know what I mean? I spent hours and hours and hours and hours cleaning this property up so that we could access it easier with the cab tractor. But it didn't start out that way. No, sir. It sure didn't. And we did a lot of work in some lot of tight spaces with our cab tractors to get it to looking the way it is. My goal is to be able to, you know, and I've got it almost to that point. There's still some sections in the swamp that I ain't got caught up yet. Let me, right behind me here, right down there, that starts the swamp. Well, once I figure out how to get my road through that swamp, then I'll be able to drive my truck around the whole perimeter of my property. But that swamp is presenting a problem for me. I keep getting stuck. I keep getting, it's hard. It's hard to cut a road through a swamp. But I've got most of my property now where I can drive my truck, my white truck, not my service truck, but my white truck, all the way around my property, and about 80% of it. And eventually I'll have it all done. And I'll have it done by using a cab tractor that's got a low fuel tank and hydraulic hoses sticking out the side. Don't buy into those myths. Don't buy into those lies. And people that say that either A, don't own a cab tractor and they didn't buy one because they were scared of that kind of stuff, or B, and I shouldn't say scared of that kind of stuff because these are grown men and some of them are pretty burly guys. I use the term scared loosely. You know what I mean? some of them are mountain men. You know what I mean? And they're not scared of nothing. But you know, in their mind, if you're that person who bought a open station tractor because of some of these concerns, then hey, no harm, no foul. That's what you chose. I just don't think it's a concern that I would have, and I don't think it's a concern that others should have. If you're one of those guys that had those concerns, listen, I'm not trying to give you a hard time. I'm not saying anything bad about you. You made your decision based on your factors, and that's what makes us great as men, right? And some of you women that out there that bought tractors, you made your decisions based on that kind of stuff too. So don't, you know, I'm not trying to dog anybody out. I'm just saying these are concerns that you shouldn't have. But anyway, with that being said, we're actually going to do some things to this tractor in the future. You know, I've added the hydraulic side link, which I have not used in a practical application yet, but I'm looking forward to it. And I really, really, really want to tint these windows. I think I'm going to do that here in the springtime and get that done. But that's, I mean, it's $1,000. You know, it's not cheap to do, but I think the payday on it will be okay because it will keep me cooler, make the air conditioner. In theory, it'll make the air conditioner work less and keep me cooler. And people say, well, what about nighttime? Listen, dude, I'm a retired Air Force guy. I'm a flower farmer. Our farm is a flower farm. I ain't gonna be out here working at night. Very seldom will I have to work at night, and if I do, I'll just have to suck it up and just be extra careful if it indeed, you know, plays a part in the visibility at nighttime. But 99% of the time, this guy at night, nah. That's the luxuries of being retired and having a flower farm, I guess. We got a lot of cool videos, a lot of good information on the channel. We'd appreciate it if you would watch a few more from us. Take care. God bless you guys.